Now, in order here, I'm going to call out each of these youngsters. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, the Beatles. Bring them on.
The Red Album, as far as I can tell, is basically a hits compilation. UK hits, but also with a few tracks that were hits in the States.
It shows the diversity of them, the type of music they did create, and of course there's all the differences between John and Paul, because around then they hardly wrote any of the numbers as a team. They still continue to do it now and again, but basically John wrote his numbers and Paul wrote his numbers.
It just seems to be a straight commercial selection, not themed in any way. Just a bunch of hits which came up a few years after the Beatles broke up, and they must have thought, time to reactivate that catalogue. So they did.
Please Please Me, the second Beatles single, the first #1.
Last night I said these words to my girl. I know you never even try, girl. Come on, 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 come on. Please, 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 oh yeah, like I please you.
That is the first real Beatles record, actually. You know, because Love Me Do was a bit offbeat, a bit slow, it wasn't typical of them, but the infectious sound of Please Please Me was I think the first real Beatles record.
Love Me Do made a small impression, you'd kind of forgotten it, but then Please Please Me was the real breakthrough. Much faster track, kind of a happy sound, whereas Love Me Do was quite blue and grim and intense. I actually prefer Love Me Do, but Please Please Me had enormous impact. Just the way it raced into the song and the harmonies all the way through, and that howl of harmonica, which kind of introduced an older sound into alongside these younger voices. It was just all action and driving along, and this interesting descending line of the melody. It captivated people, and I remember just starting to see them all over the papers right then. You know, it really started everything happening for them.
I think at that time, to be quite honest, they didn't actually vary their formula that much. If we're being really honest, they started on a road where the first, say, 10 singles had very much a sort of, not set formula, but had a set sort of way of doing things.
Please Please Me was the first single to be released in America, but it wasn't a hit. It took more than a year for it to actually reach the charts, which I think had nothing to do with the song and a lot to do with the fact that there was nobody plugging the Beatles. Nobody knew who they were. It was a stupid name, and anyway, they were from England, so who cared? But it's actually an amazing piece of songwriting, I think, for the time. It's got elements of Roy Orbison about it and elements of some of the sort of early 60s R&B. But it's the first real Lennon-McCartney song that's got that sort of indefinable something that is magic, quintessential Beatles about it.
1, 2, 3, da 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 da. If there's anything I can do, just call on me and I'll send it along with love from me to you. I got everything that you want, like a heart that's so true. Just call on me and I'll send it along with love from me to you.
From Me to You, the Beatles' third single, constructed in a very clever way where the verses and the choruses have completely different obvious chiming changes. Again, unbelievable middle eights, and also a change from the first two singles where they're slightly more obscure in the way in their chord changes, etc. I think basically they're beginning to get a formula, but it's the middle eights and the verses and the changes from the verses to the chorus that give them the keys, and the harmonies between John and Paul, which make it very clever.
I got arms that long to hold you and keep you by my side. I've got lips that long to kiss you and keep you satisfied.
It's funny, I think I still hear these songs just as I did back then when I was hearing them for the first time, which for one thing shows how fresh they are, and yet I can also remember that when From Me to You came out, I thought it was a bit stodgy and not as exciting as other tracks of the Beatles. You know, it is a bit jog-trotty and kind of, you can again feel the effort. I suppose that's always a sign that a track isn't really happening to the maximum.
I still think this was finding their sort of feet. They were getting inspiration, and it's I think it was inspired by a column they'd read in New Musical Express, and I think they had the harmonica in it again. So it wasn't really typical of the Beatles sound that was to develop in the studios because of the harmonica and the sound. It's more typical of like a cavern sort of number, the early development of them.
From me to you, just call on me and I'll send it along with love from me to you. I got arms that long to hold you and keep you by my side. I got lips that long to kiss you and keep you satisfied.
One thing you have to understand about the way the Beatles worked is like Please Please Me came out, second single, big hit. EMI tells them, oh, make an album then. And how long have they got to make the album? 12 hours. Easy. You can do an album in 12 hours, can't you? And they did. So the Please Please Me album was made at about a song an hour, which is just astonishing compared to the way bands work today. And the same would apply to the singles, of course. You'd pop in the studio when you had a spare hour and knock off a single. So although they were certainly doing their best with immense intensity, there were huge limits placed on them. And so if after 6 tries you hadn't achieved the optimum performance, well, you went with the best performance you'd got. And that's why I say, well, I'm not sure that that's the best performance that could have been From Me to You.
Just call on me and I'll send it along with love from me to you, to you, to you, to you.
George Harrison is, one, a much better guitarist than people give him credit for, and two, a much better songwriter than people give him credit for. I think his playing and his guitar solos and his general ideas have really helped the Beatles a lot. I think that because he comes from a total guitarist point of view, whereas John and Paul come from a songwriter's point of view, he added a completely different slant to it. And I think he had a lot to do with the Beatles sound, a lot more than people give him credit for.
But he couldn't compete with Lennon and McCartney, not in the quality, but they wouldn't let him record. You know, they always put him down, and they wouldn't even help him, while Paul or George would help each other. If George asked John, can I have a bit of help? Like they refused. They refused to help George. So he wrote in isolation himself, and it was coming out with really fantastic numbers.
She Loves You will always be remembered for yeah, 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 yeah.
You think you've lost your love when I saw her yesterday.
It was a massive hit. I mean, massive. It went in there and stuck for weeks. And, you know, they were selling 100,000 a day, for Christ's sake. You know, it was unbelievable.
She loves you.
She Loves You, the general rush of that, I loved. But what always got me, personally, was those harmonies, and She Loves You has some of their greatest sort of explosions of harmony, the very famous last chord of it, that it's what's making that music dense and passionate all the time, even though she says, you know, it's just saying she loves you, and you know that can't be bad. All the same, She Loves You does have this sense of something slightly different to the standard happening in the lyric. It's the singer is talking to a friend about his relationship with this other girl, not in any particularly subtle way, but something's going on there. So it's a little teen drama, and it's happening, and it's very direct and strong.
She loves you, and you know you should be glad. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. With a love like that, you know you should be glad.
If you listen back to She Loves You now, it does sound a very banal, sort of crass bit of work. But if you can manage to transport yourself back to 1963, it is the song of Beatlemania. It's so simple. It's got one or two nice little twists. There's an extra new chord they'd learnt, which they put at the very end of the song, and so on. But it's just so simple and so impossibly catchy, and it just seems to sum up all the madness of 1963. It was always the song that adults talked about. If they were trying to make a reference to the Beatles, they'd always say, "Oh, the Beatles, yeah, yeah, yeah." Just a chorus that once you'd heard, you could never ever forget.
Your Hand sort of slows down a bit from She Loves You. It was alternating with She Loves You at the top of the British charts. Something I don't know if it ever happened before. It was just amazing. That's how powerful and dominant they were.
I Want to Hold Your Hand is iconic. That is the Beatles number that became the biggest in America. This is what started them in America, you know, and this is the record that they were first told when they were in Paris, you've just come #1 in the American charts. And the whole of America fell in love with them, you know, and it was such an upbeat, happy song just a couple of months after President Kennedy had been assassinated and America had been in mourning, and suddenly they had something to smile about with the Beatles and this particular number. And I think it is iconic, will always be remembered, and I think with Americans, they'll always think of that particular number.
But that's something I think you'll understand. When I hear that something, I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
What I Want to Hold Your Hand has is energy and vitality and self-confidence, and whoops, we're taking on the world and we're going to beat everybody. Doesn't matter what the words say, and lots of people have gone back since and said, oh, the Stones wanted to take you to bed, the Beatles just wanted to hold your hand. And okay, that's true on one level, but let's just listen to the actual sort of impact of the song. The words are meaningless. What the song is saying is, we're going to take on the world, we're going to win.
They sounded like real men. Lennon's voice has such richness to it, that when he sings "I Want to Hold Your Hand," you feel a man saying something boyish, but the man is still there, so he's being romantic, but it carries a load of other implications as well. The way he sings means that you don't feel soppiness. So boys would love it just as much as girls would love it.
I Want to Hold Your Hand is just a great pop song. Very simple lyric, very simple idea, very simple subject matter. I want to hold your hand. That was one of the clever things the Beatles always did, right through to further on what we'll talk about, which is like Hello, Goodbye.
I wanna hold your hand.
They were the masters at making a very simple subject matter sound very, very interesting, putting it in a very cool way and putting it in a very positive way. 99% of Beatles songs have a massive positive attitude. To me, that's one of their hallmarks.
I think if you went and met the Beatles at that point, you would have thought they were John Lennon's band, because the others all looked to him when they were making a decision. They'd all say, is that okay? In PR terms, Paul was the one who would smile and greet you, whereas John would just tell you where to go. He was the oldest of the original three. He was 2 years older than Paul, which, when you're in your early 20s is important, I think, still. And he had a dominating personality. And at that point, he was still full of creative energy. I think it was only later on, when he started to sag, that Paul had to pick up the creative energy and more or less took over leadership of the band, whether the others liked it or not.
John Lennon's strengths as an artist and a performer were the edge he gave the band. I think that he had that edgy personality. He had everyone knew he was a bit of a sarky bugger. Everyone knew that he could be a bit cruel, but he was also a very honest man, as to the point of maybe being a bit tough. But that honesty gave him an edge, and he gave the Beatles that edge, that little bit of toughness, that little bit of sarcasm, that little bit of danger that they needed to balance it out.
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you.
All My Loving was the very first song that Paul wrote where the words came before the music. He said he wrote it like a poem, and then the music came sort of later. So this was another step in this songwriting experience of him.
I never understood why it didn't make a single, actually, even though I think it might have made a single in America. It certainly didn't make a single here. And it's an unbelievably great song. Fantastic melody, brilliant classic Beatles middle eight, and just an unbelievably good song, brilliantly sung, beautifully put together by George Martin, really well recorded. It's just a great song.
All my loving, I will say. All my loving, darling, I'll be true.
All My Loving is certainly quite a piece of work with that extraordinary double speed rhythm guitar behind it. It's going at quite a lick, and then you've got the guitar going even faster underneath it, and so the balance between them is very dynamic. I don't think it's exceptional in terms of what they were doing at the time, because most of what they were doing included innovative and startling detail, and I think that's what you're talking about there. Is there's constantly a good tune, just because Lennon and McCartney, working together and then working separately, had a fantastic ability to come up with good tunes, but then there's always interesting detail in the way they play it, and it's just about the dynamics of the four of them, with the odd bit of advice from George Martin certainly, coming up with something that's going to enliven this, that's going to lift it, that's going to bring the best out of it.
All my love.
It's just a fantastically catchy pop song, and it says something about the calibre of the Beatles' material at that point, that they could write a song as amazingly commercial as that and then not put it out as a single.
Can't buy me love, love, can't buy me love. I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if that makes you feel alright. I'll get you anything, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. 'Cause I don't care too much for money, but money can't buy me love.
Can't Buy Me Love was, for me, just a little bit more aggressive song. It was slightly more rocky. It was slight the approach you had. You know, I want to hold your hand, please please me, and you know, love me do. All slightly, very not middle of the road, but softer approach. Even though it was the Beatles from Liverpool and the beat boom and all that. Can't Buy Me Love, there was a tougher sort of sound and a tougher record, and slightly more guitar-y.
The thing I love about it is the guitar solo. That guitar solo, short as it is, never heard anything like it. The aggression of it, the way it twists the melody, just knocks you back in your chair, you know. And the vocals are good and raw and strong, and it's saying this quite fierce thing, Can't Buy Me Love.
Because they were still on the road at that time, it was showing a little bit, you know, and I like that for the fact that it was a bit more in your face than most of their recent records.
It's just about in a relationship, you know, and what you can say in 2 minutes is just something like that. Can't buy me love, it's got to be the real thing. Bang, out with this enormous, passionate, powerful, full of vibrance, youthful vibrancy kind of performance, and the guitar, you know, and the amount of imagination that you can fire into a solo that lasts, I haven't counted, but it might be 5 or 6 or 7 seconds, you know, that's all, but it's just on fire.
I suppose you realise this is private property.
Sorry we hurt your field, mister.
Can't Buy Me Love was the record that when it reached #1 in the States, that was the week that all 5, the top 5 in the charts was all Beatles. It was, yes, that was the actual week with Can't Buy Me Love. And it was a multi-million seller. And of course they were delighted when Ella Fitzgerald recorded her version. So now you reach the stage where some of the world's greatest artists are turning to the Lennon-McCartney numbers.
I give her all my love, that's all I do. And if you saw my love, you'd love her too. I love her.
And I Love Her, that is an example of the, I suppose it used to be called ballads that they did.
Tenderly, the kiss my lover brings.
Paul wrote this because of a Perry Como number called And I Love Her So, and he thought, I'll start a number at the title in the middle of a sentence. And that's sort of what inspired him, because they did get inspiration from all others. They listened to everything, you know. And Paul in particular while John was more of the rough rock and roller, Paul was the one, apart from his sort of lover Little Richard, who was down into singers like Frank Sinatra.
As long as I have you near me.
It's very well sung, it's a clever song, and I think it is quite melancholy. You know, for the first time it's sort of quite a melancholy subject, and sort of, yeah, it's a ballad but not a ballad. They didn't write ballads at that time, you know, you didn't get Let It Be or, do you know what I mean, or Hey Jude at that time. Everything was quite up-tempo. It was a sort of up-tempo time.
There's a little guitar thing, that line behind the vocal that George puts in. Maybe it's the second verse, maybe it's the third verse that changes the aspect of it. It's almost it's acoustic guitar, it's almost what you'd expect from a classical guitarist, although I'm sure it's technically simple. But it just adds this tone of delicacy, because although they were lads, they did have a genuine romantic feeling, and the delicacy that comes out in that song, I think, is outstanding and what makes it lovely.
Basically, as far as the Red Album and other compilations are concerned, I think the decisions were mainly EMI, and EMI's main thing was to make money, and I think EMI's whole basis of becoming so big in the world was on the Beatles, and the Beatles were paid a paltry sum for their recordings. They got derisory royalties, and I don't think that they entirely agreed with some of the things that EMI did with the recordings, and I think I know there was one compilation the Beatles weren't happy with that EMI came out with.
I Feel Fine will always be remembered for the feedback front. Big mistake, very genius to leave it.
Baby's good to me, you know she's happy as can be, you know. I'm in love with her and I feel fine. Baby says she's mine, you know she tells me all the time, you know.
It's the first record ever to have feedback on the record.
That record opens not with music but with a noise, and this bendy noise on the guitar of the feedback before it drops into the song. And what does that do? Well, I suppose it just says, here's something, listen. One way or another, they always had that. They were always saying, listen. And they always had something worth listening to.
Was it the best? I never go down this line, was it the best? Yeah, I just think everything they did was clever, and that was a really clever single. Great song, great idea, good melodies, more, again, lively, much more upfront and much more pushy, which was cool. Great single.
I Feel Fine is always highlighted as John Lennon being optimistic. How unusual was that? Well, it wasn't that unusual, but it is a point. And it's maybe John in the general toing and froing of what was going on at fantastic speed with the Beatles, really trying to write a hit, they say, although in a sense I'm sure they were trying to write a hit with every single thing they did, you know. And more or less did, if they, as America proved, they just had to bung an album track out and it'd be a single hit.
She's in love with me and I feel
just that one chord. I mean, how many other songs are there where you can just hear one chord and you know what it is?
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night, I should be sleeping like a log. But when I get home to you, I find the things that you do will make me feel alright.
It had another of those opening moments that said, "We're the Beatles, listen to this," which was that fantastic opening guitar chord. You know, bah, it's been astonishing moments that just, they go down to history. They're so simple, and yet it's like, we're going to be this bold.
Everything seems to be right when I'm home, feeling you holding me tight, tight, yeah.
I think A Hard Day's Night was probably their first really innovative single. It was a great subject, very, very clever line. I think John thought it up. Really, really clever line. Very, very, very well done. And it was a step forward in melody and the way the backing vocals were arranged. Very, very good song. I mean, there's no way that you can't actually just hear the beginning of that song and know who it is and what it is. It's a brilliant song, very well put together, and a definite progression in their musical trend. They were getting cleverer, they were getting smarter.
A Hard Day's Night was noted as the first time they wrote all the songs on an album, I think. They did their songs for the movie, directed by Dick Lester.
Maturity of the songwriting within the very sort of narrow pop, I love you, you love me kind of format they were working. They very, very complex harmonies, interesting chord changes, just fantastically professional songwriting all the way through.
It's one of the first kind of lived-in songs of the Beatles. They'd been through a year of madness before they got famous. They'd already been through a lot of madness, their times in Hamburg and so on, you know. They'd lived, they'd been around, they'd had hard times, they'd had near starvation times, all of that. That was in the mix with what they were putting across, and Ringo found that phrase apparently, "It's been a hard day's night," which is a nice contradictory paradox kind of thing. In itself, but it also expressed something which they weren't saying was she loves you, I want to hold your hand. It's been a hard day's night. Suddenly, these are men who've been around the block, and that's what it says immediately.
But when I get home to you, I find the things that you do will make me feel alright. You know I feel alright. You know I feel alright.
The great Ringo debate will go on forever, right? Because he took over from Pete Best, who was a pretty good drummer. Ringo played in a sort of jazz big band thing before he joined the Beatles. He couldn't have played in that unless he was at least a decent, half-decent drummer. I think Ringo was king of the backbeat. He was a very good player.
I don't think anybody took Ringo Starr seriously in the 60s, except other musicians. Other drummers would always say, Ringo's great, he's the best at just keeping a beat. You can hear hundreds of instances where John Lennon made a mistake, or Paul McCartney made a mistake, or George Harrison made a mistake. Almost never Ringo. He was flawless throughout. He was the least flashy drummer in rock music. He was very embarrassed about ever having to do solos. He didn't like that idea. He thought the whole point of the drummer was to be at the heartbeat of the band.
I think that, okay, you can criticise the other technical drummers, you can criticise that there could be other better drummers, but if you put another drummer in the Beatles, would they be as good? No. Would they be the Beatles? No. Ringo is a Beatle. He is part of the Beatles sound. His playing is part of the Beatles sound. Whether you think it's good, bad or indifferent, he is a Beatles. His sound made the Beatles what they are, as well as John and George and Paul.
Ticket to Ride, John called this the first heavy metal record, you know, and on this Paul played lead guitar, which is very unusual.
I always feel they're trying to get back those days in the Cavern at Hamburg. I hark back to Hamburg because I think they were left alone. I don't know whether they liked it or I think they found a bit of camaraderie out there, but probably wasn't one of their best days, but they learnt a lot. It actually welded the Beatles as a band and as people together, and they probably started writing a lot of songs out there. I mean, their halcyon days as a band, as a rock band, were definitely at the Cavern because they could hear themselves and people were there to see the music. They weren't screamers, although they were massively popular in Liverpool. Their screamers only happened outside. When they started to move out and became popular around the whole country, that's when the screaming started. So I think Ticket to Ride is just them trying to write songs that they would like to play on stage and like to give them a bit of a boost, a bit rockier, a bit more of a live approach.
It is quite a hard song with a hard sound, and it is starting to move away from the teen love being all about passion and just going for it and declaring, wearing your heart on your sleeve. And in fact, the girl's going off. She says that living with me is bringing her down. She will never be free. Hey, free. Imagine a woman being free while I'm around. So he's starting to think about stuff. He's still phrasing it in these wonderfully simple ways, but some sense of how real relationships might be is getting into the song. And I would say, in a sense, that was always reflected in the sounds they made from Love Me Do onwards. The sounds were never soft and wishy-washy. Some of the sentiments were soft and wishy-washy, but with Ticket to Ride, you're definitely moving away from that. Help! I need somebody.
Help! I need somebody. Help! Not just anybody. Help! You know I need someone. Help!
Immediately races at you. There's an urgency, almost panic about the song. At the same time, it still was a pop song and it still was within the ambit of a teen audience. It was still part of, I would say, the early phase of the Beatles.
The first time I heard it, I thought it's the whole complexity of the melody is so great, you know, and I thought, well, this is the development we're hearing, that they're just getting better and better.
My feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me? Now my life has changed in so many ways. My independence seems to vanish in the haze.
The circumstances of Lennon writing it are that, for one thing, Richard Lester, who was directing the Help movie, wanted a title song urgently. I interviewed Richard Lester one time and he told me it was like they were coming towards the end of filming, and one night he had a chat with the Beatles about how the songs were fitting with the movie. The movie wasn't called Help by then, but he said, I need a title song, can you write it? They came back 24 hours later with Help. Lennon and McCartney, that's what they did. They were on fire creatively, but they had a very professional attitude as well. You want a song? Okay, let's get at it, do it now. Obviously it's one that Lennon led the writing of, though I'm sure McCartney helped and so on. And he says that he decided to just, in that urgency, in that practical urgency, he just decided to pour out his inner panic, basically, about what was happening to them. What do I need? Help. Just that one word and away you go, you know. And so I suppose in that sense there were really basic, simple verbal triggers they were working from.
Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me? When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way.
We reach the time where John gets very much influenced by Bob Dylan, and he begins to write introspective songs like Help, and begins to explore his own feelings in song, which he hadn't done before.
It's very plain, and you can hear it, and he performs it full on. You can hear it in his voice, great singer that he was. You know, it's the hard man crying for help. Those two things, hard man and he needs help, and it's tough for a Scouser to say that, and he said it. That's one of the reasons it's a strong track.
Help me if you can, I'm feeling down.
Suddenly, there's polysyllables coming in terms of the language. Help is a bit of an evolution. Is using words, not terribly academic words or anything, but just words that he wouldn't have used before. Not so self-assured. It's not a pop song word at the time. My independence seems to vanish in the haze.
My independence seems to vanish in the haze.
So there's words and ideas coming in there that are definitely an evolution of what went before. They didn't jar with us, teenagers, at the time. It seemed entirely natural. It's not like he's baffling us with science or anything, but there definitely is a growth in the range of ideas and emotions that are being dealt with, and that is partly expressed by a slight change in the vocabulary they're using.
Now these days are gone, I'm not so
Help was the end of a chapter of the Beatles' career. It was like, I think very shortly after that they stopped playing live. I think they'd delivered 1, 2, 3 studio albums, 2 film albums, and they'd created a legend by then already.
Won't you please, please help me, help me, help me.
Oh, shocking. Monstrous.
With the sort of genius of Lennon and McCartney is that they were able to sort of get this creative well from inside them. I mean, with John, he started off by what we call a pint of reality, having alcohol to spur on his creativity. Then he went on to all tablets, Prelude and a Captagon and things like that. Then he went on to everything from the mysticism with the Maharishi. Then he went on to Primal Scream. Then he was on to LSD. But he was always trying to seek all the time. With Paul, it came easy. Paul just sat down and wrote. But with John, he was always seeking, always striving. And you can tell the difference in their material. And it was John, I think, who had almost, you know, more aggressive numbers, cold turkey numbers like that. Whereas with Paul, he was a great one for the romantic songs.
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday.
Yesterday is, I mean, what can you say? That is apparently the most played song in the history of the universe. Who could sit there and say, but it's no good? I mean, that's nonsense to say that. People love it, therefore it is good.
And it's strange that this number started out under the title Scrambled Eggs, you know? And but it's pure Paul McCartney, and it's not really in the Beatles canon.
Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. I said something wrong, now I long for yesterday.
An immaculate piece of songwriting. I have no idea where it came from. Paul McCartney has no idea where it came from. Various people have tried to find the melody in old songs by Nat King Cole or old bits of classical music. But as far as Paul was concerned, he just woke up one morning and had that tune, and he spent about 18 months then going around to everybody he met saying, "Have you heard this tune before? It must be somebody else's." And they'd go, "No." "Oh, okay." And then he ended up with the song.
I said something wrong now.
With the arrival of a track like Yesterday, the Beatles started to show that they were A-list songwriters. I mean, if you'd listened to all their work before, like 8 Days a Week and All My Loving, you'd know that by now. But I think everyone fawns over Yesterday as the greatest ballad ever written. I think it's an unbelievably beautiful song, really well constructed and very well written. But I think it's just one of the great songs that they all wrote, you know, Lennon and McCartney wrote together.
Oh, I believe in yesterday.
McCartney is an amazing songwriter and an amazing bass player, because he plays a melody on a bass which people don't see. His bass playing is really, really clever, and it's very, very well constructed. And because he's such a great songwriter, his bass playing is all constructed with sympathy for the song, and that's a lot of people don't see that. And he's written some great bass lines. And I know so many bass guitarists that just are great admirers of his playing.
He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for another man.
With Nowhere Man, this came after John had a writer's block. He was sitting trying to write a song and he couldn't. And he tried for 5 hours and he just couldn't come up with anything. So after 5 hours of furious trying to think, he just lay down. And as he lay down to have a rest, suddenly it popped into his mind and he wrote Nowhere Man straight away.
Nowhere man, take your time, don't hurry, leave it all. Somebody else.
It seems to have all this mystique around it, because when they made the film Yellow Submarine, they had this Hillary boob, and they created this actual Nowhere Man who was scatterbrained and everything like that. So people associate the cartoon Nowhere Man with the song, and yet that was done later by other people.
The Nowhere Man is said to be the first ever Beatles composition that doesn't deal with romantic love, not at all. So what it deals with is being alive. It's a sort of existential thing. What's it about? Well, how is it being alive? And he's a real nowhere man, living in a nowhere land. And so it comes across at the time as amongst a small cluster of very articulate songs that were written at the time by other artists that were about life and society of the time. It's questioning things.
Mature is the way to say the Beatles were becoming. They were maturing as songwriters, maturing as people. You have to remember they were pretty young when they started. So they were maturing, you know. George was 19 when it all kicked in, the others were not much older. And you have to understand they were young guys growing up in this madness. And they'd seen everything. They'd done it all, they'd seen it all, they'd probably taken it all, God knows. But they were growing up. So they started to see things, and they started to see things in a different way.
Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. lives in a dream.
Eleanor Rigby, again, was just one of those moments when you're completely grabbed. Clearly, in a certain sense, you'd immediately hear a connection with Yesterday because of the strings. It was in that area. But you know, the interesting fact about Eleanor Rigby is it was the first Beatles track where there was no Beatles instruments played. It's only strings. Beatles don't play anything on it, it's just the vocals they do.
Look at him working, donning his socks in the night when there's nobody there. What does he care? All the lonely people, where do they all come from?
It was really moving on, in other words. And so at the end of the Red Album you have that, which along with Yesterday, Nowhere Man, along with Help, things are really moving forward, things are really developing. It's always identifiably the Beatles, but it's like we're starting the journey. You can feel it starting to take off. It's not just the excitement now, there's all sorts of other things that are happening. At first it was an adrenaline rush, a testosterone rush, whatever. But now it's getting far, far different. Things are really changing and we're going with them. That's the great thing in that generation. But I think it's why the songs work down the generations is new listeners don't go through the chronological experience that we did at the time, but each one of them is so well expressed, each of the experiences, you can come to it separately and feel that.
All the lonely people, where do they all belong?
Captain, Captain.
In the town where I was born lived a man who sailed to sea, and he told us of his life in the land of submarines.
Isn't Yellow Submarine a fabulous song? Hey? Paul wrote it for kids. He said this is a kid's song and should be sung for kids and sung by kids and all the rest of it, you know. And it's lasted as a kid's song. They could really write songs that children would love and be singing for decades, and very few songwriters have done this.
We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine.
Isn't it wonderful how Yellow Submarine gets over that tag of novelty record? Which it does, and I suppose it's quite clearly a children's record, but it crosses over to adults. It's so cheery and humorous and sort of self-mocking as well, you know, and the band begins to play it.
We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine.
Essentially, it's a lovely essence of the Beatles' spirit of fun, is what it is. I guess the fun gradually faded out of the Beatles' music, but that really captures it.
We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine. Oh yeah, I'll tell you something I think you'll understand when I say that something.
The thing about the Beatles was they arrived at a time when it was almost a cultural desert in pop music. They particularly were the ones who dragged pop from being 2-minute songs for teenagers into something more intelligent and more ambitious. Now you can only do that once. You can only conquer the world once. So I can't see any way in which there will ever be another Beatles.
They gave a whole generation a meaning. They were like They don't want to be. They didn't want to be like that, but they did become that, and they gave the whole music industry its start. You know, the music industry would never be as powerful and as productive today, and half the musicians that are in it wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Beatles. They led a whole revolution in the music industry, inside it and outside it, to the whole world, and they gave the world some unbelievable music, which is completely timeless, as much as Mozart or any other classical musician will be.
I wanna hold your hand when I touch you.
The Red Album, I don't think, will give you the full picture of the Beatles in that era. It gives you a picture of the Beatles at #1 in the charts, so to speak. Now that's quite a diverse picture. You can see their development tracking through that, and of course you do just get a bunch of terrific tracks anyway. No reason not to buy the Red Album, but I guess I would simply say that the individual albums are so truly brilliant that if you can afford it, I'd recommend to anyone that they buy the individual albums and enjoy them in their entirety. I suppose if you were buying the Red Album and one other album from that period, I'd say buy Revolver, because that is where they really started to develop in some very unpop directions, and also Revolver is not very well represented on the Red Album, so if you like, that's quite a big area that's missing there. So that's my consumer recommendation. Red Album plus Revolver, but really buy all the individual albums anyway.
When I touch you, I feel happy inside. It's such
When doing a Beatles compilation, you're bound to leave out enormous numbers of good tracks. In a certain sense, no Beatles compilation is going to be right, because so much of the material was wonderful. You know, it's like it's hard to pick out duff tracks off their albums. I do dislike a few of the tracks, but it's more a matter of, well, you might as well hear the whole of the original album, mightn't you? So in a sense, the Red and Blue albums, they were fair enough, they were hits. They weren't saying these are the best Beatles songs, they just say these are the hits. Okay, that makes sense. If you want it, you got it.
I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your
Okay, thank you.